the institutional neutrality thing and not having academic boycotts are designed actually to help with academic freedom, whereas having the university be explicitly making political statements as well as being subject to a random boycott from a professional society or an organization or what have you is the opposite of conducive to academic freedom. So today what I'd like to do is compare and contrast a little bit, or really just compare more than anything, but two very different things. You may have recalled me talking about it a few months back, the Academic Freedom Alliance and Heterodox Academy, and the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, rather. It used to be in education. I almost said the wrong name. FIRE, as it were, calling for university campuses to basically institute a policy of institutional neutrality. And the notion of institutional neutrality is basically that the university itself, as an institution, takes no side in any political hot topic issue of the day. It doesn't matter which one. And to my point today, the exact topic in question is irrelevant here. It's just a question of do you or don't you with certain things. As a general matter of principle with respect to the university. Again, why am I talking about the universities? Because the universities are where we train the next generation of scientists, so what goes on there kind of does matter for folks in STEM in particular. The other is a slightly different thing and a change in trajectory from a particular institution, which I am no fan of, but does, or did, historically have a great track record with respect to defending academic freedom. I'm doubtful of that nowadays, as you might have guessed from my remarks. First off, from the College Fix, published today, institutional neutrality implemented at USC, Purdue, Johns Hopkins, and the University of Texas system. Institutional neutrality is having a moment. The policy has been implemented at numerous top-tier universities in recent weeks, a trend that shows administrators are likely becoming weary of taking sides on hot-button topics, thereby upsetting donors, alumni, lawmakers, and students. The point of institutional neutrality is more so that the university shouldn't take sides. Doesn't freaking matter whether or not what the professors take sides on. It's just that the university itself should not. That's the difference here. We're not asking all people at a university to be neutral. That's not the point. But the university administration, the leadership of the university itself, should be the home and sponsor of critics, to put it in the Calvin Report, but not itself be a critic. That's the idea with institutional neutrality, in a sense. In every good sense. The changes also come after university leaders tried, often unsuccessfully, to appease both sides of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict amid rancorous and sometimes violent campus protests during the 2023-2024 school year, but ended up infuriating pro-Israel and Jewish contingents after leading campus presidents, that was a bad typo on myself, would not condemn the calls for the eradication of Israel. Most recently, on August 20th, the private and elite University of Southern California informed the campus community that taking sides on controversial topics, quote, can silence people, be seen as speaking for everyone, and lead to unintended consequences. Keep that one in mind for later on the other topic, actually, because this is one of the things I want to point out. The thing here, of course, is the other thing to keep in mind with this is the notion that private and elite is important there, because the University of Southern California, being a private school, means it isn't technically bound by the First Amendment, as most of the state schools are. Well, actually, no, as all of the state schools are. All of the state schools are themselves bound by the First Amendment. But the University of Southern California technically is not, as a private school, as is with most private schools, but it is generally good practice to work with things like the Chicago Principles, the Calvin Report, and the like, because you are still a university campus where you are supposed to be fostering the exchange of ideas and debate, not necessarily, taking a side in anything or shutting down particular discussions either. Quote, in line with these ideas, going forward as individual leaders or on behalf of the university, we will not post statements or take sides in political or social debates unless it pertains directly to our institutional mission and operations. Point taken. Also last week, the University of Texas System Board of Regents approved a new measure in its free speech policy barring the system and its institutions, including the University of Texas, from taking political stances or making statements on matters not immediately pertinent to their campuses or operations. Again, it is, quote, not the role of the UT system or UT institutions to adopt positions based on political or social passions or pressures, the new rule says. Institutions should not, in their official capacity, issue or express positions on the issues of the day, however appealing they may be to some members of our university community. Again, talking about the institution, not the individuals. Individuals can do whatever the hell you want. I may vehemently disagree with you, but you can say whatever the heck you like. That's the point here. On August 15th, Johns Hopkins University leaders announced a posture of restraint and pledged to only issue university statements, quote, in the limited circumstances where an issue is clearly related to a direct, concrete, and demonstrable interest or function of the university. The reason is that statements, quote, can create a perception that there are approved, broadly held institutional views on political or social issues, views that don't always align with those held by some members of the Hopkins community. And this is exactly the point. This is why the institution itself, one of the reasons why the institution itself should not, it's seen as endorsing a particular position. You end up alienating folks who don't share that position, and debate stops, essentially, or gets really restrained, is the thinking behind that. One that I do actually very much share, in that if a university is taking a particular political bent, then it, regardless of whether it's right or left, can end up shutting down folks who disagree. So that is the point there, just to make. The university clarified that faculty are still entitled to make their own statements, and that the restraint policy applies to the president, provost, and deans. Moving forward, in considering whether and when to issue a statement, university leaders will determine whether the issue clearly pertains to the direct, concrete, and demonstrable interest or function of the university. And this is a good point. Again, the institutional neutrality is not about the individual faculty or students or staff. It's about the university as an institution. Two very, very different things. In June, Purdue University leaders approved and adopted a statement of policy on institutional neutrality, which reflected the university's longstanding practice. I think I said that right. The move was prompted in part by a sweeping new law in the state that requires intellectual diversity. Senate Bill 202 took effect in July and directed university trustees to form standards for intellectual diversity and free expression. Quote, as required by SEA 202, which I'm assuming is the state Senate thing, but anyway, this policy provides that the university will refrain from taking an official institutional position on a government proposal or policy debate that touches on a social or political issue being contested in the public arena unless that proposal or policy has a direct bearing on the university's fiscal affairs or on the tools afforded to it to advance its land-grant mission, Purdue stated. Other universities have made similar moves earlier this year, including Stanford, Syracuse, and Harvard. We'll see if it holds at Harvard in particular, but anyway. And back in 2022, the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill's Board of Trustees passed a resolution affirming the university's commitment to institutional neutrality. Now, this is all well and good, but you might guess actually there's another story around here that I may look at another time, because apparently Syracuse broke its pledge after 3 days. This is a portion I wanted to... This is something I wanted to bring up in particular with this, is that it's all well and good that the universities are doing this. Enforcement and continuing to abide by it is a different question. All well and good. And this should hold regardless of whatever hot button debate is going. It doesn't matter. The university should not take a stand on it. Now, the reason for this, of course, is to allow for people from different backgrounds and from different perspectives on an issue to be able to talk freely at that particular university without feeling the pressure from university leadership to say that you can't say that. Of course, that doesn't include anything that directly violates law, as it were. So not including all of that kind of thing, or probably violations of codes of conduct, particularly at private universities. That's a different thing. But for just general commentary on different issues of the day, No, the university should not itself take a stand. That's the point of institutional neutrality, is to allow debate and discussion. Likewise, one of the things that presents a problem, as has been talked about in the last few weeks in particular, is the idea of an academic boycott. Let's put it that way. Academic boycotts are basically with professional societies, for the most part, saying, you know what, we don't think this university is doing all that well on X thing, therefore we're going to instruct our members to do that. Instruct our members to boycott that university, or we're going to boycott that university. Any number of different things. That is an interesting problem. Why? Because you're punishing all the people at the university for the faults of the university leadership, or for the faults of a government if it's a state school, or for any number of other different things. And it strikes me as wildly unfair to go and say you should boycott an academic institution and thereby punish everybody at the institution, students and faculty alike, who may or may not agree, may or may not have anything to do with things that are going on, because a lot of the work may have the work done there may have absolutely nothing to do with the thing you would be boycotting the university over. Any number of different things. So it was a surprise to see from the American Association of University Professors, this is the group that I I might have had respect for at some point had I learned about them when they were younger. I don't have a whole lot of respect for this group anymore because of some of the things they've been basically pushing, which says to me the group is wildly biased. But they did, to their credit, at one point, reject the notion of academic boycotts, as it were, and actually stick by the idea that you shouldn't punish the individual professors for the thing that you dislike about the university as a whole, or the government, or any number of different things, because obviously some of the state schools are funded in part by whatever government, so, there is that. But, but yeah, I found the statement itself here. There's a bunch of things here. Suggested and used to compromise academic freedom. I should like to see that. So when they actually redid this statement now, because what they did recently was they decided, you know what, we're going to throw out the whole thing of opposing academic boycotts, and now we're going to stand in support. And this was one of the reasons they gave for why they reconsidered the position, is apparently the not boycotting has been used to compromise academic freedom. Freedom is what I meant to say. I should like to know the proof of that, to be honest. That's a statement in the affirmative, but there is no evidence given. So I should like to know the proof of that. But the general gist of it here is that, and of course this will be linked in the chat linked in the description of the video for you. It's just, yeah, here's the thing. It doesn't help anything, I don't think, to just boycott an entire institution because you're upset about certain things at that institution. And they say, you shouldn't do it. They say in this statement, you shouldn't do it. Where is it? Yeah. Academic exchange should be freely conducted without regard to political or religious viewpoint. Okay. Committee A therefore holds that individual faculty members and students should be free to weigh, assess, and debate the specific circumstances giving rise to calls for systematic academic boycotts and make their own choices. To do otherwise, yeah. Where is the thing actually about? I'm missing it. I'm trying to find it, and now I can't find it because I remember reading the statement that an academic boycott... I disagree with this statement wholeheartedly, because I do think academic boycotts are themselves violations of academic freedom, in most part because you are actually punishing all the members at an institution for your disagreements with the leadership or whatever the institution. Where is it? I swear I saw it. There was something in here about an academic boycott should not be done because of religious or political reasons. Yeah. you're going down this road. What's to stop a systematic boycott because of a political reason at this point? While such joy, faculty members should not. Yeah, I know that they shouldn't. Here it is. Actually, we reiterate that academic boycotts should neither involve any political or religious tests and nor target individual scholars and teachers engaged in ordinary academic practices such as publishing, scholarship, delivering lectures and conference presentations, or participating in research collaborations. I'm sorry, if you're boycotting a whole institution, you are stopping the individual professors from doing that, regardless of the reason why. And there's no reason for me to think that this wouldn't devolve into political or religious litmus tests. In fact, matter that's some of the folks I think who are involved, who might be looking at this favorably, like, yeah, well, we can now boycott an institution because of X thing politically that they did that we disagree with that has nothing to do with functioning the university or the university ensuring academic freedom. Those kinds of things. So no, this is not so great on the part of the AAUP, and that was actually pretty well discussed by others. Op-eds from the Harvard Crimson. The AAUP threatens academic freedom by changing its tune on boycotts. Yeah. I mean, they're not arguing for specific boycotts of specific things, but like this points out, there's been plenty of articles at this point discussed online that point out the problem with doing this. It came in from Inside Higher Education. Of course, there's more criticism here for it. Oh gosh, and frankly, I wish I had known the institution before now, but I did not, and so they haven't been the greatest one from what I can tell. I wouldn't give a whole lot of support to the AAUP. One thing before I forget, I wanted to find it real quick because I did find this particular piece as well, which admittedly has its own opinions here, but there's been a number of groups that have reacted to the American Association of University Professors' decision to end their opposition to academic boycotts, which generated some pretty scathing criticism. I unfortunately couldn't talk about this last week when it first came out because of some technical difficulties that I had in the process of trying to record. The recording came out with no audio. If you believe it, that was a problem. But there's a lot of commentary that's coming here. There's open letters here, which actually I will say, if you are a professor, the professor and academic in any capacity, this open letter is actually still open for signature, so I very much suggest that you sign the letter, as it were. The letter says, in part, we believe the AAUP's position is wrong-headed and dangerous. We cannot safeguard academic freedom by violating academic freedom, and academic boycotts do violate academic freedom. Normalizing academic boycotts poses a profound threat to academic freedom. The AAUP does not speak for us. We call on our fellow scholars to join us in opposing boycotts of fellow scholars wherever they might reside and be employed. You recall what I said before about institutional neutrality? That point of institutional neutrality is actually to allow the professors, the individual students, the staff, the professors, to be able to speak their minds freely on something. Problem with an academic boycott is you're boycotting absolutely everybody and doing harm and presuming, because a lot of this comes from professional societies, and that's the reason the original opposition that AAUP came about was because of a British society trying to boycott somebody, and the AAUP said, no, it's wrong-headed, and that society withdrew their boycott. But if you're telling a whole professional society you can't work with this particular university, does that whole professional society speak for its members? No, it does not, and yet you're making it very difficult for those folks who are members to work. And what about the members at the institution you ended up causing the boycott at? Really? This is why I have a problem with it. It is actually punishing, academic boycotts into just punishing everybody in an institution, regardless of whether or not they agree or disagree with the thing you're upset about. And that is not conducive to academic freedom in the slightest. In a Zoom event yesterday with Heterodox Academy, President John Tomasi Carey Nelson, who was the former AAUP president, by the way, called the AAUP's abandonment of its opposition to academic boycotts a self-inflicted wound, which he predicts will lead to the downfall of the organization. Heterodox Academy came out against it. Fire came out against it. Lots of editorials and op-eds. I won't belabor the point that there's actually plenty here for you to read. Of course, this will be linked in the description. My point in all of this, I go back to our original thing here, is that the institutional neutrality thing and not having academic boycotts are designed actually to help with academic freedom, whereas having the university be explicitly making political statements as well as being subject to a random boycott from a professional society or an organization or what have you is the opposite of conducive to academic freedom. And actually, in the case of academic boycotts, it punishes people who perhaps have nothing to do with the thing you're upset about, or perhaps agree with you, or perhaps don't. But at the same time, the institutional neutrality thing is important because taking a position, a university taking an explicit position on something does throw the power and weight, or appears to throw the power and weight of the university behind one side, and so perhaps stifles the voice of a different group who would disagree. So, hence the reason for that. Both institutional neutrality and not having academic boycotts actually do help with academic freedom. And that also ultimately helps with the progress of science. That's it. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button on the way out the door, comment on the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, all that lovely good jazz. Until next time, I'm Adrian. Stay curious.